Okay, Gina, thank you so much for joining us today. We're
Thank
happy
you
to
for
have
having
you.
me.
Thank you so much for your time. So let's get started. And it'll be great if you can tell us about your professional experience and your education background. That'll be really, really helpful.
Absolutely. I've been drawn to leading others and running operations for a really long time. And so I grew up in Maryland, where I attended University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and studied economics. From there, I moved into being a skincare and beauty buyer in a startup organization and also a department lead. And so I basically had a hand in establishing standard operating procedures, training manuals, and sourcing projects. My path has continued to bring me to leadership roles, whether it be in retail operations, supervising real estate, or running operations in educational environments or in fulfillment where I landed last. So prior to returning to school for my master's, I served as the founding leadership team for Maya Angelou Public Charter School Middle School. And then I later served as director of operations for a bilingual school, both of which were in DC. And so my studies led me to seek opportunities for larger scale leadership, which led me to Amazon, looking for roles in operations and logistics outside of the environments I previously had been in. And so I came to Amazon through the Pathways program, which was a high stakes, high reward leadership program where I got the chance to really challenge myself with larger headcounts, large volume buildings, a manual environment where we didn't have a whole lot of robotics. And from there, through my career with Amazon over the next 4 years, I landed and promoted as a senior operations manager. All in all, I really took being called bossy as a child and turned it into a career leading, guiding, and supporting others.
That's great, Gina. And thank you so much for sharing your background.
Sure.
And it seems like you have been involved in mentoring and career coaching for a long time. So definitely great for our attendees and our platform users. Great. So can you tell us more about the roles and responsibilities of an operation manager?
Absolutely. So, an operations manager, their main role and responsibility is to own their business. And what that looked like can be different things. So, at the level of an operations manager, you are typically a leader of salaried employees or managers and responsible for a shift within the overall operation if it's a larger scale business, or if it's a smaller scale business, you're responsible for logistics, operations, procurement, budget, everything involved in running that particular business. And you're also responsible for developing entry level managers and indirectly any assistants that then report to them. In fulfillment, it typically means that there are several departments that report to you and several managers and teams in those departments that are now reporting to you for guidance and leadership.
Hmm. Okay, that's awesome. So what's your typical day as an operation manager?
A typical day as an operations manager is honestly anything but. So, as a senior operations manager, my activities include capacity planning, data deep dives on prior performance, development activities for my operations managers, driving multiple team performances, leading or sponsoring continuous improvement activities, basically engaging my team at all levels. And so, which on any day, it could mean that I'm leading a regional meeting where I have my directors presence and VPs, or I could be wearing the Explorer costume in the office. And so from day to day, you are essentially as an operations manager, you are forecasting your production capacity against your promise. So this means that you're going to be challenging your team to perform above and beyond their previous performance. It'll also include identifying any risk to meeting your goals for the day, um, establishing goals and determining how you're going to overcome that risk. For an operations manager that's leading a particular shift, their day typically starts with an on-site meeting where they've already reviewed prior to that what their goals are and how the previous shift performed. They check in with their shift leaders and they meet with all of their department heads at one time to really set the pace for the day and what the goals are. Their salaried managers then take that information and cascade it to their teams where they're giving each department their goals for the day and challenge them to perform.
Hmm. That's like a very intense role. So I'm sure there must be
It
some
is.
fun aspect in your job position as well. So what's the most fun part of your job?
Honestly, the most fun, especially when it comes to having worked for Amazon, is really being able to have the freedom to create. So prior to even fulfillment, I worked in education, which meant I had a chance to really let go of ego and build opportunities with my teachers, with my students, and really have fun in the workplace. In Amazon, it means that I've hosted poker events for my team. I've built houses with my managers, and I've even worn tutus with my team at work. And so really having a chance to sort of let go of that ego and let go of that view of you as a manager and being stiff and being able to have a good time and work beside your team. So we've done everything from warm up dances and flash mobs in our building to wearing mustaches for Movember.
That's great. Awesome. So, Gina, there are a lot of job seekers out in the market, both entry-level recent graduates as well as working professionals who are trying to either get started in operations manager role or who are willing to switch their career uh, from any other role into the operations role. So what's your advice to break into consulting role?
Okay. So typically entry-level operations roles will be in smaller businesses, or you'll start at an area manager type of role if you don't have any prior experience leading people or running operations. So with little to no experience when it comes to running operations, area managers are great ways to go. And my suggestion is, if you are finishing school, to look for programs with 4 recent graduates through your career services, through your professors, or through any connections you have to that particular organization that you're identifying. Entry-level roles are a really great way to allow yourself to establish as a leader, learn your process in business, and really have a quantifiable impact. Operations is all about results. And so taking advantage of those programs will really give you a chance to set your foot and really leave a mark.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That sounds perfect. So apart from the, the approach that you mentioned to break into into operations, are there any other job search strategies that you would recommend that people should adopt? Like, as I was a consultant in Deloitte, and I think the networking is a big piece when you have
Absolutely.
for a consulting job. And like, there are a few other consulting groups out in the market, right, that you have to be absolutely a part of, right, to get job there. Are there any other specific strategies that you would recommend for operations career aspirants?
Absolutely. So take advantage of any type of professional organizations, whether it's a national MBA conference that you can attend, whether it is Urban League in your area. Take advantage of all those professional operations and activities to really get a chance to get out there and network. It's a really great way to meet people that are already in the organization and establish those connections that way and be seen as a potential candidate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. And resume is definitely the most important part of any job search, right? Because it's a highly competitive market out there. For every job position, there are like thousands and thousands of applications out there. How would you recommend an operations role aspirant to prepare his or her resume so that they can make it
Okay.
noticeable? So can you just identify like 3 or 4 key factors that your resume should reflect to the
Absolutely.
attention of hiring manager?
Absolutely. So number one, you want to make sure that you are quantifying your results. As I mentioned before, operations is really about results and impact and delivering. And so showing on your resume that you have a history of being able to deliver is going to really be key here. And so when that comes to someone who's reviewing your resume, they're looking for specifics along the lines of volume, financial impact. What did you deliver? Head counts that you led, how many people were impacted by your leadership. We're looking for those types of numbers. Also, be succinct. So a lot of times I'll see resumes that are multiple pages, very lengthy, and don't really get to the meat of what that candidate has done in their career. We don't have time to really read multiple pages. Anything that's too lengthy will either get skimmed or ignored. So you want to make sure that your language is getting to the point of what you have done and that you're being very captivating with your words. And number three, you also want to display your ability to lead others and move teams. And so I've talked a bit about quantifying results and your impact. You want to show that you've been able to lead a larger headcount, or at least have been able to be a direct leader of others before, and what you were able to do with those teams. So show that because of your leadership, these people were affected or impacted by what you did.
Yeah, I think that's a great advice. And Gina, apart from the points that you mentioned about resume, what skills do you would you like to see when you're recruiting someone for operations role? So maybe as a hiring manager, when you interview people, what 3 skills would you recommend someone to have on their resume or they should be prepared with?
Yeah, so aside from technical abilities, we're often all looking for math skill sets, ability to use software, really look at data. The 3 key skills that I really look for above and beyond of some of the basics are their ability to teach and develop others to really achieve results, and then having high standards. And so these are all skills that are going to be tested time and again when you hire new leaders, when systems and processes change, and everyone goes into to learning curves for new experiences, or even in earning the trust of your employees as well as other senior leaders. These are all some keys into having an impact. And so when we're looking for operations managers, we're looking for those that can teach and develop a team, because you will be leading other salaried managers. You will be leading a larger headcount potentially of associates. It's your ability to move people through the ranks, to have a plan in place for those folks to do well as well. And so can you teach new concepts? Can you understand your process? Can you develop something new and then share that with your team? I've already talked a lot about achieving results. really that's what operations is. You are expected every day to meet and exceed your goals. Can you do that? And can you move a team in that same direction? And then having high standards, can you set expectations for your team? Can you communicate them? And can you hold them accountable to those expectations, right? In operations, we are often challenging ourselves to be better than we were the day before. High standards are part of that and being able to achieve those results.
Mm-hmm. And Gina, when you said like high standard, does that mean that it's too competitive as well? Like,
I wouldn't say, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that when I'm saying competitive, uh, is it like a 9 to 5 work, or is it that you have to complete a certain task and it may extend beyond 5 o'clock? Because if I talk about consulting, we didn't have like a specified 9 to 5 hours, because sometimes it's quite tolling, right? And we had to stretch it until like 8 or 9 p.m. But it's not like every other day. So just wanted to understand it from the operations perspective.
Honestly, typically operations is not just 9 to 5, and that's been in a variety of industries that I've been in, whether it's education, retail, fulfillment. It is typically outside of those hours. But when I talk about high standards, it's also about being able to do better than you did the day before. And so competition can be within the network, can be between official competitors, for instance, other companies, or it can just be that yesterday you hit 100, tomorrow you need to hit a 102. How are you going to get there? Right? Or holding your team to a moral high standards. How do I expect my leaders to act and carry themselves in front of their associates and employees?
Okay, that's awesome. So, Gina, what's the interview format for operations role? Like, how many rounds of interviews are there? Whether it's technical, whether it's all behavioral. So, do you have any structure for interviews?
You can expect 3 to 4 rounds. Typically, you'll have a phone screen in most environments, and I'm finding that in other roles as well. You'll have a phone screen, and then you'll be brought in for another round or two. And typically, you'll have rounds of interviews on that day where you see multiple people. And so your interviews, each interview could take half an hour to 45 minutes. And depending on the specific role that you're applying to within operations, there are a number of different roles within operations management fields that are still, some could be more technical than others. You may have a case study. We typically tend to have behavioral formats when it comes to people leadership. So we're looking for folks that can lead large teams. You're going to see a lot of behavioral type of interviews. If you're gearing yourself towards a more technical role, you can expect more case studies and more of a technical interview.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you'll often hear people refer to the STAR method, and largely when you're talking about behavioral interviews, that is one of the key standards that we're looking for in the way that you format your answers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. And what are the most common 4 to 5 questions that are asked for operations manager position?
So when you're applying to an operations manager role or position, you can expect to be asked any of these 5. Number 1 is always going to be about your background and your experience. This is what we sometimes refer to as your elevator pitch. Especially if you've been through business school, you understand what an elevator pitch is, but this is where you get to introduce who you are as a leader to your interviewer. This is your first chance to make a mark. You can expect people to ask when you have failed. That's not always a common question when it comes to interviews. Oftentimes in operations, we're looking to see, can you be critical of yourself and admit to when something didn't go well? And then can you also share what you learned by doing that, by having that failure? What did you then pull out of it? How did you succeed the next time? You can also expect to be asked about experience leading tough employees or team members, because it's not always going to be roses. You're going to have people that don't want to do what you're expecting of them, that want to do their own thing. How do you handle a leader who is not immediately following you? How do you really get someone on your team? How do you influence others? You can also be asked about how you achieve results. I can't say it enough in operations. It's really about your ability to deliver. So how do you do that? What about you is different as a leader than the next person that is able to then achieve those results and get things done? And then also who you are as a leader. What would your team say about you? What is your leadership style? These are all questions that you'll get pretty frequently in operations managers interview.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me, Gina, that it's more behavioral rather than in technical, right? Because the leadership questions about your background, or like when you're failed, right? All these are more the behavioral questions. So would you recommend aspirants to focus more on the behavioral side while when they plan to appear for any operations interview?
I would suggest to do a mix of both. A lot of it really depends on the specific role that you're applying to. Particularly the Pathways program through Amazon that I applied to, I did have to be able to speak to my technical side and be prepared to handle a case study in a shorter amount of time. And so depending on the company you're applying to, the specific role and the responsibilities, you may have a more technical approach to your interview where you're actually expected to take care of calculations in front of your interviewer. And so I
Mhm.
would prepare for a bit of both.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay, and what are the best resources to prepare for interviews? Do you have any recommendation for certain books or blogs or websites?
My recommendations are all along resources. And so the top three for me that I think are the best, number one is the company's website itself. That's where you'll find their particular language, their principles that they stand by, what's important to your employer, as well as any company business information that's open to the public. Number two, any contacts or employees that you know within the industry itself or that particular company, they can share really valuable insight into how interviews are conducted and what to expect. And so I can speak in particulars about some things that you'll find in certain Amazon interviews, but depending on what you're applying to, really those industry contacts will be key there. And also the news. In operations, it's really important to know what your company is doing, how do they fare in the market, and who is their competition. That's where you find a lot of good information.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much. And how do you define the career path of an operations manager? Like, where does it start? What's the entry level role? And where can it lead up to?
Okay. So for operations manager, the career path is really what you make it. So know your desired path before you start and be open to figure it out in the process as well. So there are several paths that I'll share with you all. Typically for an operations manager, if you're starting at an entry-ish level, you'll start at area manager and then move up to ops manager, or you can start at ops manager. And then your next course could be from operations manager to senior operations manager, meaning you're now leading several operations managers who are responsible for several shifts and departments. From there, you can move to assistant GM if you're in particular focused on a building or fulfillment, for example. And an assistant GM is now having an impact on senior operations leaders and really being involved in the culture of the building, ensuring that you're delivering and they are learning and on their way to becoming a general manager. And then from general manager, you could then move up to regional director. That's one path. Another path is from operations manager to individual contributor role if you decide that is the path that you would like to take. And a third one is from an operations manager to a regional team role. So sometimes candidates are looking to move outside of a particular building or a particular organization, but this is a way for you to have a regional impact. And then also you can move from an operations manager role to a site lead. And so there are some opportunities where there are smaller businesses where you may be at that same level as an operations manager and be running a smaller business on your own. So those are just some ideas of particular paths when it comes to being an operations manager.
So it's very, very diverse, right?
There is a lot of opportunity out there, and that's what I mean by it's really what you make it. Especially for larger companies, you have a hand in your own self-development, and you can decide where you want to go. And so there are different paths based on what you are interested in, where your skills are.
Okay, that's awesome. So as you talked about larger companies, so what characteristics do you consider while selecting an employer for this particular type of position, right? Because it's really important which company to choose if you're looking to spend at least 3 to 5 years at a particular place. So what are the 3 or 4 most important things that a candidate should consider while selecting an employer?
I think it's really important to consider the employer's reputation for investing in your development. And so if you're looking to be with a company long-term, you want someone who invests in you as well. Someone who believes in continuing education, who provides support and make sure that you are being supported as a leader that you're trying to go into. So for me, investing in development is important. Longevity of the company. When you're looking for someone, you want to make sure that they have a firm foundation that they're going to be around. Also, depending on what you're looking for, look at the size. And so know what it is that you feel comfortable with when it comes to how you want to be challenged, whether you want to work in a really large company or if you want to work in a smaller company and have a larger impact and make a name for yourself that way. Those are good things to know ahead of time and make sure that you're looking into that when you look at the company that you're going to apply to. And then really, where are they in the market with their competitors? Because when you look at longevity, you want to make sure that you're looking for a company that is, like I mentioned before, going to be around. Are they leading the competition? Are they falling behind? Are they stable? What is it that you're really looking for out of your application to a company?
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. Thank you so much. And it seems like operations manager, there's like a lot to do. You have to keep multiple things in mind, right? You have to manage a team at the same time. You will be working
Absolutely.
with various teams all through the day. So what are the 3 to 4 major challenges that you face in your daily job as an operation manager?
So I will say challenge is really great. And so a lot of times we'll look at challenge as something that's negative. But challenge is a really great way for you to grow and really work in a dynamic environment. So four main challenges I'll say that I see as an operations manager are ambiguity. So as much as you plan for an outcome, and as an ops manager, you will have things drawn out by hand, you'll have them on Excel, you have very detailed information. As much as you plan for an outcome, you can still expect for it to change. You can expect for a wrench to be thrown in your plans. How do you then handle that ambiguity and stick and move, so to speak? Another one is breaking the status quo. So when you're dealing with an operation, you can bet you'll run into the mentality that something has always been done this way, especially if you're in an operation that has a really large headcount or has what we call veteran employees, people that have been with a company for a really long time. We tend to get stuck in some habits. And so your role as a leader will be to challenge and change that, okay? Also, when you're moving a large team, moving a large group of people on time is a challenge. So understand that oftentimes in operation, you are working with people, especially if you're working in an operation largely impacted by hourly employees, this can be a challenge. Everyone has their own motivation and expectation, as well as life outside of work. So as a leader, how do you move 1,000 people in the same direction and really have it done yesterday? So those are some of the challenges that you see. And then also, as I keep mentioning results and being better than before, another great challenge is being better than yesterday. So this will constantly be a challenge that you set for your team, that senior leaders will set for you, that the region will establish or a network will establish as a goal for you. How do you take lessons learned and how do you analyze your business performance to be better today than you were before with the same resources?
That is great. That is amazing. And I think, I think it's very helpful for each and every employee who's a part of a team and every team member, right, to continuously get motivated by everyone in the team. If everyone's pushing hard, right, beating their own goals, I think it's great for professional growth. So awesome to hear that.
And that's what makes it fun as well. When you have competition or you set a goal for yourself and you see that you're able to exceed it, that keeps you going.
Because I've seen so many of people or like friend in my network, they were in a constant 9-to-5 job, like doing same work. And after 2 to 3 years, they get frustrated. And like, now we want to move into either consulting or operations role, right? Or the strategy side of it, where there are new challenges every day. So yeah, I couldn't agree less. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Gina, here's my final question. And I'm glad that we were able to cover all the questions so quickly and in such a crisp manner. So the final question is, what advice do you have for aspiring candidates to be successful in their career as an operations manager?
Absolutely. So in operations, I have two things that I would like to leave everyone with. Number one, learn at all levels. So from your employees, your peers, your senior leaders, take advantage of every opportunity and seek out opportunities to grow and learn. This is what makes and keeps your operation dynamic. So learning enables you to move with the time and to find ways to operate efficiently and also be willing to get your hands dirty. And so one of the key things when I talk about learning, that's how we grow. You never stop learning. And if you do, that's a problem. In operations, there's a lot that's being done out there that you can learn from others that you can then take and add to your operation or tweak in ways that you can be better, or you can be the one that teaches. And as I mentioned, be willing to get your hands dirty. So servant leadership in operations is key. In all of my roles that I've held as a leader, I've either worked at the level of those who work for me, or I spend time getting in path and working beside my team if I did not do that job before. And so doing so not only really helps me to uncover ways to improve the conditions or processes for my team, it also builds stronger working relationships and earns the trust of my team. We don't really respect those that look down at us from above that are supposed to be managers. We respect those that are working beside us and understand or can empathize with what we're going through and what the job entails, even if that's not your responsibility. That really helps you as a leader understand what is expected of your team and really how to work and lead your team.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Gina, for all the wonderful insights and advice. I'm sure this is very, very helpful for all the operations career aspirants. And it was very helpful for me as well to learn a lot about operations. Trust me, this was my first encounter with the operations role, and I learned a lot. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot
for your
advice.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. We look forward to have you in our future webinars as well. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
You have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.
And thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll get you the recording of this webinar in the next few days. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.
Oh.